Hello friends, the next topic under the main topic profit and gains from business and profession is the computation of the business income. Section 29. What are the various headers of the section of the business income? And the second topic in it is the treatment of rent, repairs, insurance related to fixed assets, namely building, plant, machinery. So for this fixed assets, what is the treatment of deduction? Whether they are deductible, the rent, rates, repairs and insurance paid by the SSC, whether the deduction will be allowed under the income tax law or not, that we will study. Hello friends. Now the next topic, the topic of computation of profit and gains from business or profession as defined under section 29. So according to section 29, the structure of the overall sections of the profit and gains has been mentioned, wherein sections 30 to 43D have been mentioned over here. So on your screen, according to section 29, the profit and gains from business or profession are to be computed in accordance with the provisions contained in section 30 to 43D. Go to bullet points, wherein section 30 to 37 are the admissible deductions which are allowed to the SSC. So if you have any expenditure which falls under the head 30 to 37, then the same will be allowed as a deduction to the SSC. Section 40 is the inadmissible deduction. If certain conditions are satisfied, then Section 40 will be applicable and accordingly expenditure already incurred won't be allowed as deduction. 40A, there are certain payments or expenses not deductible in certain circumstances. Section 41, which charges profit. A certain profit is chargeable to tax even if the business is not in existence and if certain conditions are satisfied. And section 42 to 44 are the other provisions. So section 29 specifies the overall structure of the profit and gains, wherein the profit and gains from business or profession are to be computed considering the provisions contained under section 30 to 43D. Second para, the Act further permits allowance of items of expenses under residuary section 37(1), which extends the allowance to items of business expenditure not covered by section 30 to 36, where these are allowable according to accepted commercial practice. Meaning, in overall income tax law, you have a residuary head of income from other sources, wherein if any of the income is not falling under the preceding heads, mean income from salary, income from house property, business income or capital gains. So if any of the income is not falling under this head, then it will be taxable under the head income from other sources, provided the same is taxable as per section 4 and section 5. So similarly, section 37(1) under the head profession income, business or profession income is a residuary section wherein expenses which fall under section 30 to 36 will fall under those sections, and if the expenses which have been incurred which are not falling under section 30 to 36, that will fall in residuary section 37(1), provided it is indeed an expense which is incurred for the purpose of the business. If yes, then the same will be allowed under the residuary section 37(1). Next topic is on rent, rates, repairs and insurance on the buildings. Section 30. First, let's read what section 30 says. So basically, From the header, you will understand that this is related to the expenses incurred by the SSC for the rent, for the rates, taxes, repairs and insurance related to the building. So obviously the SSC is using this building, this property for the purpose of the business, and in the course of business he has incurred certain expenses which are in the nature of rent, rates, taxes, repairs and insurance. So whether the same are allowed to the SSC or not, this will be covered under section 30 on your screen. In respect of rent, rates, taxes, repairs and insurance for premises, which is the building, used for the purpose of business or profession, the following deductions shall be allowed. First, when the premises are occupied by the SSC as a tenant, the same is occupied by the SSC as a tenant, the rent paid for such premises, and further, if he has undertaken to bear the cost of repairs to the premises, the amount paid on account of such repairs. So, the tenant will be allowed deduction of rent paid and deduction of repairs, and it should be in the course of the business or profession. If yes, then the same will be allowed as a reduction. Now, again, where the premises are occupied by the SSC otherwise than as a tenant, the amount paid by him on account of current repairs only will be allowed as a deduction. So otherwise as a tenant, meaning if he is occupying the property as a owner, for example, then the repairs to the premises will be allowed as reduction and the property is used for the purpose of business of the SSC. Point B. Any sum paid on account of land revenue, local rates or municipal taxes on the property will be allowed as deduction. Point C. The amount of any premium paid in respect of insurance against the risk of damage or destruction of the premises. So if any premium paid on the risk of damage or destruction of the premises, then the same will be allowed as deduction. Explanation. For the removal of doubts, it is hereby declared that the amount paid on account of the cost of repairs referred to in clause 1 and the amount paid on account of current repairs. So, cost of repairs and current repairs, any amount paid therein shall not include any expenditure in the nature of capital expenditure. So, the expenditure, the deduction on the cost of repairs, the deduction on the current repairs, it will be allowed as deduction under section 30 only if it is related to the revenue expenditure of the SSC. If it is in the nature of capital expenditure, if the repairs are in the nature of capital expenditure, then the same won't be allowed under section 30. Same may be allowed under section, the same will be allowed under section 32 in the form of depreciation. So any capital expenditure falls under section 32, any revenue expenditure related to the repairs of the property will fall under section 32 and the same will be allowed to the SSC. Section 30 allows, so this is now continuing with the interpretation of the notes prepared based on the reading of the section. So we have already finished reading section 30 as per the income tax law. Now what are the further interpretation notes therein based on various circulars or notification of and based on judicial precedents, based on various case laws? What is the interpretation? Section 30 allows deduction in respect of rent, rates, taxes, repairs and insurance of buildings used by the SSC for the purpose of business or profession. So it should be used by the SSC for the business or profession. That the premises are occupied by the SSC as a tenant, the rent paid and the cost of repairs will be allowed to the SSC. Premises sublet. So this is additional notes wherein the SSC is subletting the property further and earning rental income from it. So in a way, the SSC is paying a rent to the main owner. To the owner, he is paying the rent. However, SSC is also earning an income from subletting, the rental income from subletting. In those cases, the net income, the net rental income, the net cash outflow of the owner, the net cash outflow of the SSC will be allowed as deduction to the SSC. In a way, total rental expenses paid to the owner is 100 and income from subletting is 20. So the net income 80, net expenses 80 will be allowed as deduction to the SSC. On your screen, where the SSC has sublet a part of the premises, the allowance under the section would be confined to the difference between the rent paid by the SSC and the rent recovered from the subtenant. So the difference is to be taken into account. The rent payable would be allowable deduction under this section even though the income from the property in respect of which it is paid may be exempt from taxation in the hands of the owner. So the rent payable will continue to be allowed as deduction in the hands of the SSC even though the same income, even though the same expense is not taxable in the hands of the owner. Next point, occupation of premises as a owner. Where the SSC himself is the owner of the premises and occupies them for the business purpose, no notional rent would be allowed under this section. However, rent payable to the partner, rent payable to the partner will be an allowable deduction to the extent it is reasonable and is not excessive. So, in this case, what will happen is the owner of the property is the partner of the firm, and the partner of the firm has let out the property to the firm. Now, the firm is paying rental expenses. The firm is paying rental expenses to the partner of the firm. In those cases, firm will be allowed deduction of rental expenses under section 30. And obviously the partner will be taxed, the rental income will be taxed in his hands in a personal capacity. So the rent payable to the partner by the firm will be an allowable deduction to the extent it is reasonable and is not excessive. Next point, repairs of the premises. Apart from rent, this section allows deduction in respect of expenses incurred on account of repairs to building in cases where SSC is the owner, SSC is a tenant who has undertaken to bear the cost of repairs to the premises, even if the SSC occupies the premises otherwise than as a tenant or owner. So he may be lessee, he may be licensee or mortgagee with possession, is entitled to the deduction on account of expenditure incurred on repairs. So the repairs are allowed to the tenant, to the owner, to the lessee, to the licensee as well if the same is incurred for repairs and the same should be revenue expenditure for deduction under section 30. Cost of repairs and current repairs of capital nature not to be allowed as deduction as per explanation to section 30. Other expenses in addition deductions are allowed in respect of expenses by way of land revenue, local rates, municipal taxes and insurance in respect of the premises used for the purpose of business or profession. Cess, rates and taxes levied by the foreign government are also allowed as deduction. Next point, premises used partly for business and partly for other purposes. In those cases, only a proportionate part of the expenses will be allowed as a deduction. So, where the premises are used partly for business and partly for other purposes, only a proportionate part of the expenses attributable to that part of the premises which is used for business will be allowed as deduction as per section 38(1). So, a property used partly for business, partly for personal purposes, part of the property which is used for business will be allowed as deduction. Rental expenses or any other expenses that we have discussed earlier incurred on the property which is used for business will be allowed proportionately in the hands of the SSC. So in this section, section 32 states deduction of certain expenses incurred by the SSC wherein the expenses are incurred on a building, on premises. Now, section 31 states repairs and insurance of machinery, plant and furniture. So, section 30 stated rent, rates, taxes additionally related to building. Section 31 covers machinery, plant and furniture. The fixed assets are machinery, plant and furniture, and the nature of expenses are only repairs and insurance. Wherein section 30 stated covered additionally expenses related to rent, rates and taxes as well. And section 30 was related to building. Section 31 is related to expenses of machinery, plant and furniture. Now what does the Act says? Section 31 in respect of repairs and insurance of machinery, plant or furniture used for the purposes of business or profession, the following deductions shall be allowed. First, the amount paid on account of current repairs thereto. Second, the amount of any premium paid in respect of insurance against risk of damage or destruction thereof. Explanation: for the removal of doubts, it is hereby declared that the amount paid on account of current repairs shall not include expenditure in the nature of capital expenditure. So almost on similar lines with section 30, wherein capital expenditure related to the repairs won't be allowed. So again, used for the purpose of business, following expenses shall be allowed: current repairs related to machinery, plant and furniture, and premium paid on insurance against the risk of damage or destruction of the property. Property is machinery, plant and furniture. Additional notes: Section 31 allows deduction in respect of expenses on current repairs and insurance of machinery, plant and furniture in computing the income from business or profession. In this, the usage of the asset. The word usage of the asset is important, wherein it should be used for the purpose of business or profession, whether it includes passive use as well. So, what is the difference between passive use and active use? Active use is something which you have indeed used for the business or profession, and passive use is something which it is ready to be used for the purpose of business or profession. But though actually there was no need to actually use the machinery or actually use the asset. So, for example, you have purchased a machinery, and if you have used the property, actually use the property for example for production of the goods, then fine, you will be allowed deduction related to it. However, if you have purchased the machinery and somehow there was no need to use that machinery because there was no further production required for that particular year or some other reason, then it will be allowed the deduction related to it will be allowed as a deduction to you. The deduction, the expenses related to such property which is kept ready for use will be allowed as expenses. The expenses related to it will be allowed as deduction to the SSC. So this is the difference between active use and passive use. Friends, now on your screen, the usage of the asset. After studying the difference between the active use and the passive use, now on your screen, usage of the asset. In order to claim this deduction, the assets must have been used for the purpose of SSC's own business, the profits of which have been taxed. Even if an asset is used for a part of the previous year, the SSC is entitled to the deduction of the full amount of expenses on repairs and insurance charges, and not merely an amount proportionate to the period of use. So also, if you have used the property for part of the previous year, this para says if the property is used for part of the previous year, in those cases the deduction need not be proportionated. The deduction will be allowed 100%. The deduction of repair and insurance will be allowed 100% even if the property is used not 100%, even if it is used only for part of the year. Next point is repairs excludes replacement or reconstruction. So the term repairs will include renewal or renovation of an asset, but not its replacement or reconstruction. If it's a replacement or reconstruction, that would amount to a purchase of an asset, or that would amount that a new asset is coming into existence, and accordingly it won't be a revenue expenditure and accordingly not allowed under section 31. Also on your screen, also the deduction allowable under this section is only of current repairs but not arrears of repairs for earlier years. The arrears of repairs of earlier years will be allowed as deduction under section 37(1) but not under section 31. So in this pointer we have studied that repairs should not be in the nature of replacing the asset or which amounts to reconstruction of asset. Repairs should be only related to renewal or renovation of an existing asset, does not bring a new asset into existence. And further, the next para was repairs which are pertaining to the earlier years. Any arrears of repairs which has been paid in this year won't be allowed as deduction. It will, however, be allowed as deduction under the residuary section 37(1), but the same expenses, the arrears expenses of repairs, won't be allowed under section 31. Next point is insurance premium. The deduction is allowable subject to following conditions. Insurance must be against the risk of damage or destruction of the machinery, plant or furniture. The asset must be used by the SSC for the purpose of business or profession during the accounting year. The premium should have been actually paid under the premium should have been actually paid or payable under the mercantile system of accounting. The premium may even take the form of a contribution to a trade association which undertakes to indemnify and insure its members against loss. Such premium or contribution would be deductible as an allowance under this section, even if it is returnable to the insured in certain circumstances. So, the highlighted para says if you are paying premium in case of mutual benefit associations wherein the member is asked to pay any premium and the member pays premium to a trade association, in those cases as well, the premium paid, insurance premium paid to trade associations on the insurance of the asset, insurance of the machinery, plant and furniture, in those cases, the deduction will be continued to be allowed to the SSC. Also, premium should be actually paid or payable, and it should be for the purpose of business or profession of the SSC, and it should be for the insurance should be for the risk or damage or destruction of the machinery, plant or furniture. Next pointer, current repairs of capital nature not to be allowed as per explanation to section 31. So it is in a similar lines of section 31 wherein it was specifically mentioned that capital expenditure, any expenses in the capital nature won't be allowed as deduction under 31 as well as under section 30. Both can be allowed. If any capital expenditure is incurred, then the same will be allowed under section 32 but not under section 30 and 31. And just to brief you on the meaning of the current repairs, it is something which the owner or the tenant, the SSC, has to incur, and it is during the normal course of the business that certain repairs should be adhered to, certain repairs should be undertaken for the normal maintenance of the property. If this is the case, that will be termed as current repairs. Obviously, it should not be in the durable nature, in which there is substantial expenses incurred. If substantial expenses are incurred and altogether a new asset is coming into force, then in those cases it will be termed as capital expenditure. Next pointer is machinery, plant and furniture used partly for business and partly for other purposes. In those cases, on a similar lines of section 30, only a proportionate part of the expenses will be allowed as deduction, which is coming from section 38 subsection 2. So this concludes section 31 as well, in which we have discussed that expenses related to repairs and insurance of the asset, which is machinery, plant and furniture, will be allowed as deduction to the SSC under section 31. This concludes the series of section 29, section 30 and section 31. Section 29 was related to the computation of profit and gains from business or profession, wherein we studied the overall structure of sections of profit and gains from section 30 to section 43D. Then section 30, wherein we studied the expenses related to rent, rates, taxes, repairs and insurance of the building were allowed as deduction to the SSC. And lastly, section 31, wherein the asset is the machinery, plant and furniture, and expenses are repairs and insurance related to such assets, that will be allowed as deduction to the SSC. Thank you.